Hello, Toronto, and welcome back to Season 5 of the Real Estate Talk Show. My name is Simon Giannini, and we're here to give you the inside scoop on all things real estate. Whether you're buying your first home, thinking about investing in real estate, or just want to know what's really going on, this is the show for you. And just a reminder, you can go to realestatetalkshow.ca or call 416-366-9090 to answer any questions, find out what's going on, market updates, stats, and so much more. We'll be video broadcasting as well, recordings of all our shows, segmented by topic and special guest. And the idea is to be the resource for everyone in Southern Ontario and the rest of Canada for all things real estate. I've got a great guest in studio for me. Joining me today is none other than Calum Ross. Calum Ross, if you haven't heard of him, you're probably not in the business, but just in case you haven't, he's a Harvard Business School alumni. He is a Schulich MBA. More importantly, he's one of the top mortgage advisors and finance advisors in the country. You can probably clarify what your exact title is, Calum, but he's here to share his insight and wisdom and many years' experience. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh, thank you for having me. So looking forward to it. It was such a pleasure to listen to Season 4 and see all the great information. It's awesome to be part of it.
Yeah, the idea is, there's a lot of media attention to what's going on in the real estate market, but there's also a lot of misinformation. Would you agree?
Oh, geez, the media attention and misinformation, don't the two go hand in hand?
Absolutely.
I have to tell you, that was one of the reasons that I was drawn into the show last time. When I'm looking at it, there's a very big difference. And, unfortunately, this is what happens all the time. Obviously, I'm a double finance major. So, people look at asset classes all the time. And when asset classes go up, of course, everyone tells this terrible bad news story. And what people need to focus on is looking at a show like yours, looking at the market dynamics, really understanding what the true numbers tell us, because what we know with certainty is that bad news sells newspapers, unfortunately. And so people get caught up in this hysteria saying real asset prices can't go up. I remember when I did my BNN interview closing out 2015 and talking about, could prices go up? And everyone's like, no, it can't happen. Well, look at where we are. It's basic fundamentals of supply and demand. And you know what? When you look at comparative asset classes, and you've covered this off yourself, we've got Toronto. Toronto is one of the best cities in the world. And we're sitting back, and a lot of people want to live here. And there's not a lot of growth in housing supply. So it's basic economics, and people get into this idea of selling newspapers and media stories, and people need to focus on the facts, and that's what you tell here.
Yeah, and they need to read into the stories too, Calum, because I hear all the time there's a misconception that because we're in the business that we might be overly optimistic and always telling rosy stories. But the fact is, we're not here to predict the market. What we're here to do is tell people what's going on, understand the fundamentals, and then make decisions for themselves. It's interesting. A client sent me an email. Hadn't talked to him in a few years, and he sent me an email and he said, he was laughing because he was looking on a website that was making fun of our predictions 4 years ago. And it wasn't my predictions. It was the general predictions, meaning, is the market going up? Of course it is, because here are the fundamentals. And
I think I know the piece you're talking about. This is Garth Turner who got it wrong. Garth Turner, the ultimate, I don't believe in real estate investing guy.
Yeah, well, coincidentally, he's promoting his own fund. But it was interesting because my client pointed out that all of the predictions that we were making on the show all came true in the last 4 years. And it doesn't mean that we know everything, but I think if we focus on the fundamentals, and the first question really is, what's going on with the market? So let's recap what's going on in the market right here. And we're in studio. It's fall of 2016, and the media is again all over real estate. So what's really going on in the Toronto market, we'll just point out a few fundamentals, is number one, we have, as verified by Facebook, because we know if it's on Facebook, it must be true.
Must be.
Toronto continues to be one of the top cities to live and work. We have a very strong economy. We have, I believe, finally a good mayor. Not that the past mayors were any worse, but there's a lot of good things going on. With the park that they're building in the central area, on the railway lands, with everything they're doing to drive the economy and everything here. Yep. So number one, the basic fundamental, and this is what people miss. We have a population growth in the GTA that Stats Canada, not you or I, Stats Canada is predicting is going to grow this city net 100,000 people a year.
Can I just interject one little thing here? Here's an interesting thing, because people think that, I'm trying to sell things, and factually, that's obviously not the way I built my business. I'm a wealth management investment background, and here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the value of my iPhone or Apple stock. I don't know what's going to happen with Google, but here's one thing I do know, Simon. It's really cold in January, February, and when you have 100,000 people moving into Toronto, last time I checked, that's not really a good thing to be doing, is being outside. People need housing, and it's, again, I come back too much, I talk about supply and demand. That is the fundamentals of economics, and people need to look at that story and supply and demand, and you talked about net migration of people. Obviously, people used to move out to the suburbs and stay out there. Here's the thing, what people have figured out, it's way cooler to live in the city. This is a way better place to live in the suburbs. And by the way, I spent some time in the suburbs, and I've got two wonderful daughters that live in the suburbs, and I love to visit them there. But it's just that now people are moving back in the city. We're living longer. We have more vibrant lives. What it used to look like when you were 65 years old, and today, now we're much more mobile. We're living longer, and you know what? There is this ongoing demand for the city lifestyle, and with that demand, there has to be supply. And those dynamics of the housing supply is that housing supply does not move up quickly. And so you look at net migration of 100,000 people, that's going to bake in a lot of demand, and people need to focus on those numbers.
Yeah, well, let's make people aware of what the numbers really mean. So if 100,000 people are coming to Toronto, what we know statistically is that's 40,000 new families. That's 40,000 new households. And what's interesting, if you look at the sales volume, because the press is usually reporting on sales volume, they're usually reporting on the average price, and there are two indicators, but there's many others, and we'll get into that. But if we had, for example, in 2015, we had a record year of over 100,000 homes changed hands, and that's and for the first time ever in the last few years, condos were the majority. So 55-60% of all transactions were condominiums. Why? Because condos, you said it, people are moving into the city.
Yep.
They don't want to commute. And, God knows the traffic situation in the GTA is terrible in most municipalities. And when people decide, you know what, I'm either going to drive till I qualify and go to the burbs, or we're going to buy a starter home in downtown Toronto, which means anywhere from 500 to 1,000 square foot condo. And it is what it is. It's the Manhattan effect. It's the Manhattanization of Toronto. And when we look at that, because, people drive down the Gardiner, they see all these cranes, and the question always comes up, who's going to buy all these condos? The real question is, who bought all these condos? Because as you know, when the construction started, it's already pre-sold, there's already construction financing, and the construction that's going on in downtown area is only trying to keep up with the demand. And in fact, not only do we not have a surplus, we're predicting a shortfall within 2 to 4 years. Right here in downtown Toronto, people find it hard to believe, but the stats don't lie.
Well, the other thing too is that you touched on a really important point there. As traffic grows, if I look at myself, when I went through my divorce 6 years ago, I thought about the idea of being close to my daughters, but then you consider the time of commuting. And at some point when you're a higher income professional, which most people who live in Toronto are, you have to be mindful of the actual time and the value of your time commuting in and out. And quite frankly, again, I have nothing wrong with the suburbs. There are obviously a lot of places that I think are amazing to live. But when you factor in that time, if you're commuting into Toronto, I don't understand how the economic decision is to not buy into Toronto, because you have to look at that incremental cost, and it's not like you move out to the suburbs and it's astronomically cheaper. The nice neighborhoods in the suburbs are also seeing strong appreciation and price growth too.
Absolutely, and we're seeing a big stretch right now. The delta between buying a low-rise versus a high-rise, the average condo downtown is probably $500,000, and the average detached almost anywhere in the 416-905, you're looking at new construction, is over $1 million. So there's a big spread. And absolutely, the lifestyle decision aside, we can't comment on that, whether you want to live in a detached home an hour from downtown or do you want to live in a condo. That's a personal choice. But when we talk about the fundamentals, we've got two important key factors. Number one, we talked about population growth. With 100,000 sales last year, you got to feel that 40,000 new families coming here every January 1st is going to have an impact. And at the same time, we have record low inventory. What does that mean? There's no homes on the market. There, some pockets are more than others. And that's an important point to point out as well. When we talk about the real estate market in Canada, or for that matter, the real estate market in Toronto, even the GTA, there's really 50 micro markets. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because, people constantly quote me when I do the real estate economics pieces is that, there's no such thing as a Canadian real estate market. Talking about a Canadian real estate market is like saying what the Canadian temperature is like. It's the most ridiculous concept in the world. There's independent economics of supply and demand. And similar to what you pointed out, you and I handle a lot of joint transactions together, and we've seen our clients make a lot of money in these little pockets where they've got infrastructure spend. Right now, if you noticed, we've got a very big federal budget that has just announced a bunch of infrastructure spend. And while people will look at this and say infrastructure spend, it's a good thing, what people need to be more mindful of is thinking about the real estate economics and the way that impacts the actual local neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods that now have greater access, that people can now have better access to downtown jobs and move around, those types of things make a very big difference in value. And if you look at the big real estate economics textbooks even, and you look at the great real estate investment experts, that we know that infrastructure spend is a huge driver of the price growth. And so again, not only do we have supply and demand of the actual population, but when you've got, $1 billion being committed by our federal government into the province of Ontario, and a lot of that infrastructure spend coming in here, Toronto, there's a lot of focus. There's net migration of the population. People want to see the infrastructure getting stronger here, and our mayor and the provincial government, they're going out of their way to support it. And so these are all good things for the economic fundamentals of the area.
We've got to go to break soon, and when we come back, what I want to talk about, Calum, is, let's break it down to the average person. The average person is just wondering, is this the right time to buy? Is this the right time to sell? Is this the right time to invest? Did I miss the boat? And we're going to talk about just that when we come back. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Real Estate Talk Show on AM 640. And just a reminder, if you have any real estate questions, we've got the answers. All you have to do is go to realestatetalkshow.ca to ask any real estate question, or call our help desk 24/7 at 416-366-9090. You're listening to the Real Estate Talk Show right here on Talk Radio AM 640. Stay tuned.